everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia. Hello, what's happening?
Sam Healy. What's happening, folks?
Yeah. It's that kind of video.
No.
Yeah.
All right, we're talking about our top 10 fantasy games. The last time we did this list, we were live
Where?
at Dice Tower Con.
Oh,
And we argued a lot about what fantasy meant.
I don't remember any of
I
that.
thought we did that for the sci-fi one. Or we did that too.
I thought that was a
for the
sci-fi
one.
list, maybe.
We argued about a lot of stuff. No, I went back and looked at the other list because I was curious what we had said. Because I feel a lot of my games did not exist when we made that
I'm
list.
curious myself, because I don't recall that.
I never go back and look at the lists.
Well, I looked at it after I made this, but I was curious what the differences were.
Well, I'm not a big fantasy fan. I had a hard time coming up with this list of 10 fantasy games, because I went through all my own games first. And proportionately, I have a very small amount of fantasy games. I have a lot of sci-fi, and I'm way more forgiving with sci-fi, like generic sci-fi, than generic fantasy, and a lot of real-world settings. And so what I tried to do here is obviously pick games I like, but also rank them by how much I think that theme adds to the experience, and if it's a world I can kind of get into. I avoid generic stuff if I can help it.
I need you to pick something controversial so we can argue.
All right, well, my top 5 are actually science fiction games, and my bottom 5 are all abstracts.
Hashtag clickbait.
No, so for
We
me,
need to argue. Otherwise, we suck.
there's if the game took place in a world or a universe, I only picked one game from each universe. I think.
Like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, some other stupid
Yeah.
stuff. Got it.
I also didn't pick
that-
anything I consider to be mythological because I consider it a different category.
Like Lord of the Rings, Harry
Now,
Potter.
mythological is like Kemet.
I know what mythological, like Lord of the Rings.
That's not
Isn't
mythological.
Kemet actually based in the Harry Potter universe?
Number 10.
All right, my number 10 is a game that is thoroughly fantasy. I wouldn't say it's generic fantasy, though. It has some eccentricity to it because of some of the different clans, especially now that they have an alliance set that's out. You can mix and match a whole lot of different kinds of factions, and you come up with a very non-generic style of fantasy, and that is Summoner Wars. Summoner Wars is basically it's a 2-player game that can be played with 3 or 4 players, and it's in my opinion, it's not really good in that 3 or 4 player version. It's more just a great 2-player game back and forth where you take your army against another army on a grid. You have certain types of movements that you can do, special powers, all this type of stuff, using mana, so to speak, to
Magic juice.
fire off some of these different abilities that you have. And I just really enjoyed the game from the very get-go. What it came out like, oh goodness.
2007.
Wow,
something
was it
like that.
2007?
It's been a
Something
while.
like that. I was introduced to it at Origins. I remember that
Maybe
specifically.
2009. It's been a long
And
time.
I really enjoyed it a lot. So easily made my 10 Summoner Wars.
Yeah, so generic fantasy is also something that I'm kind of not a huge fan of, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to it like Z is. So my number 10 is pretty generic fantasy, and that's Thunderstone Quest. All right, so this game just came out. In fact, we can see it up there. It's a giant box, 22 pounds.
So this actually answers questions that people send us on Q&As a little bit.
Like, did we get the game yet?
No.
Oh,
How many plays does it take before it can make a top 10? You've played this like twice.
By the time you're watching this, probably more than that.
Maybe.
it's a big game, and it is based on other games, which you
Yeah,
say
that's
a
the
lot.
thing, though. I mean, if I hadn't put Thunderstone Quest, I would have put Thunderstone Second Edition.
True.
But yeah, so no, I mean, that's why. But I really do. I think each version of it makes it more fantasy. The very first edition of Thunderstone
Also gotten
was
better too.
was like a deck builder,
Yes.
and you also fought monsters occasionally. The second one, you kind of went into the dungeon. The newest one, you actually move in a dungeon, and it's still more abstracted than the cards, but it feels like you're getting a party together and going out to fight monsters now. Much more than the first one.
Yeah.
It has a much more cohesive story to it, especially with the quests and things. It's still fairly generic, You know, they got the classes are warrior, mage. You know,
Sure.
It's very generic, but they do a lot of things that are different in it. So,
Now,
and
this
I
is
like the Thunderstone runes.
Yeah, this is a good pick. I mean,
Well, thank you, sir.
it killed Dominion for me. That's how much I like the original Thunderstone. I just did not see a reason to play Dominion anymore because Thunderstone did basically exactly the same thing that
Well, they're
Dominion
really
did.
different now,
But
though.
this one had a very neat, generic fantasy theme on it. I know Dominion did too, but I just liked it better.
True, technically Dominion is fantasy.
If you put that on your list, I will hit you with this clip.
No, but my number 10 is
There's
pretty...
a witch.
My number 10 is fairly generic. I'll give it that. It is my number 10, though, but I like the theme ultimately could have been anything, but I like the fairy tale feel of the game.
It's not fairy tale.
It's not. It's a drafting game called Paper Tales. Paper
Because you
Tales.
said fairy tale, it's a drafty game.
No. Yeah, no, I did. No, it's the look that seals the deal here for me. It's got this very much a like fairy tale fantasy land look to it. All the artwork is very similar to, you know, it doesn't feel like pieces snatched from different artists. It all has this sort of paper craft sort of look to it. And you've got all sorts of creatures in there, you know, golems, and you got your dragons, and you got all that stuff in there. The game has it manages to pull me into its little sort of fantasy setting, generic though it may be, and the look sells it for me. You guys are gonna hate on this?
No, only him. I also really like the artwork of fairy tale. Do you know how many times I have to change this?
It's disgusting.
No, it's okay.
That's my number.
I held it back. It's
That's my number 10.
Thanks. Thank you for your due diligence.
Such a wonderful man.
I don't know. It was just a really bland looking game to me.
You
I
like
love
the
the
game, though,
logo.
right?
Love
You just
the
thought they looked
It's
good.
okay.
Oh, I really like it.
I've played it once and I've never had a desire to go play it
Oh
again.
man, I really like it.
Me too.
That's my number 10.
Number 9.
All right, it's time for my annual hate from Sam.
Annual, that's way more frequent than that.
No, I
Daily.
know what he's talking about.
Your daily hate.
This game has fantasy in the name.
Yep.
Battleground Fantasy Warfare.
Oh.
This is what I've always wanted, though. That's I want a big fantasy army fighting another big fantasy army. I like that. And unless you pay a whole lot of money for miniatures, you're not going to get it. I don't feel like paying $50 for a dragon when I can get a whole pack of cards and there's dragons included.
Okay.
This
Okay.
one really came. I mean, this has a historical
they're
expansion to
flat.
it. Yay! I like the fantasy stuff way better.
Right.
And I like that they did some fun stuff too. Like the undead army has a half undead giant who's like throws stones and things like that. They added a lizard race, which I love. You know, with raptors and dinosaurs and T-Rexes running around. That sort of thing is. I just like it. It's not abstracted at all. It's fantasy. And then each new race they came out with, they made it weirder and cooler fantasy. So this game was supposed to be rebooted in 2017. I don't think it ever was. Maybe it's happening this year. I don't know.
I wonder why.
I didn't hear about that.
Well, no, I would.
It's a game that's old enough, and now we have Kickstarter. It would probably do well on that sort of platform.
I also think that because it's kind of niche.
It is.
It's a miniatures game without the hobby part of it, which
Without
for
the
me is
painting and the
the perfect
miniatures, yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's not for a lot of other people.
Right.
So
Cool.
Battleground Fantasy Warfare.
All right, my number 9 is a game I also put on a lot of my lists, and again,
Pandemic.
you guys,
Fantasy.
not Pandemic Fantasy, but one of the Pandemic games is technically a fantasy game, but it's not on my list.
Are you talking about Pandemic Cthulhu?
No, that's
Yeah.
horror. That's not fantasy. And that's another thing
Well,
I
which
did.
one are you talking
I did want to
about?
mention that I did not put anything that I thought would be horror instead of fantasy on my list. Which anytime I find anytime I find fantasy in my collection, or most of the time, I was like, oh yeah, that's fantasy. Oh, it's actually horror.
I think they're two different genres.
They really, they
If
kind
I'm
of.
like, kids, we're watching a fantasy movie, and then Hellraiser shows up, they'll be like, ah!
Well,
Look at that fantastical
That's an
creature.
extreme.
Yeah,
That's an
come on,
extreme.
man.
But,
Anyway,
I mean,
this is
they do. I think fantasy horror is a subgenre in and of itself.
They both have zombies in them. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Anyway, this is Blue Moon Legends. Blue Moon Legends, again, I know I put it on a lot of my list. I love the game, and I don't find it to be generic. It is its own universe with its own groups of peoples, and they are very bizarre and different. And you've got like the funky Flit, the bird people, and you've got the little kids who are like in little gangs or whatever. And it's just, I think it's an interesting universe. You definitely have to sort of want to get into the lore to get into it, because otherwise you could just gloss over all that stuff. But I do, and I enjoy it. So that's my number 9 two-player dueling game, Blue Moon Legends.
I agree that it's
A 2-player dueling game.
That's good. That's good.
what's your number 9?
My number 9 is one that I actually got into for its historical value. That's what originally grabbed me when it first came out, because that's what it was really kind of. I mean, it had a couple sprinkles of fantasy in it. Some of the promotional characters that were released in its own little blister pack were like, hill giants and that type of stuff. And
There was a spider, I think, in the original.
yeah, and there was a spider
There
in the
were a couple
original
of
game. So
monsters
there's-
in the base box, though.
yeah, there were, but again, it was just sprinkles. It didn't really have that real fantasy vibe, but I was looking for the historical. Like, first expansion was the 100 Years War, and I was looking for that kind of stuff. But then they just kind of stopped. It's Battle Lore 2nd Edition. I'll do it. It's okay.
But you started going on with expansions already. I wanted to make sure people knew at this point.
Oh, okay. Well, they know. Battle Lore
We all
2nd
knew,
Edition,
but clearly.
however, definitely went full bore down that fantasy
Yeah, they
road.
stuck in the tearing out the universe.
Yes, and that was that's cool. I enjoy that universe. I like all of the things that the game gives us. First of all, I'm a huge Command and Color system fan. I like all of those games in varying levels. But this one has a really unique setup that I really like about it as well. And so there's a lot of things that pull that out from that system for me. The deployment or setup system is one of them. But I really just enjoy the system a lot, and this is a great fantasy part of that system. So Battle Lore 2nd Edition, my number 9.
Number 8.
My number 8 is a game that's gotten very little buzz, actually. It's pretty much up and vanished at this point. It's called Arcane Academy. It's co-designed by Eric M. Lang and
Kevin Wilson.
Right. And it is a very simple mages at a school kind of theme. You are supposed to be taking like a test at your magic school.
The Tri-Wizard Tournament.
That's a Harry Potter thing, but that's pretty sure, right?
I knew he watched it.
I've seen like 3 of the movies. It's really boring. And then, but in this one, you are sort of triggering your little spells, gathering mana or again whatever it is, and using that stuff to fuel
Magical juice.
magical juice. You're triggering
That's what you
spells,
said.
getting victory points, things like that. It's got a really cool, mechanically, it's got a really fun concept in which you are marking spots on your little board that you are building up throughout the game. And as you trigger something, you drain it, you mark it that it's drained, it triggers, and anything it's connected to triggers. And you will eventually have to clear off your, the draining tokens so you can use that stuff again. Mechanically very rich and very clever, but it's a small game. It's a fun game, very bright. I like it. That is Arcane Academy, my number 8.
Okay.
That's an okay pick?
No. I think that's a great game.
Is that
actually.
an okay pick?
It's just that it's not very.
For you, yeah, it's great.
That's right.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, I
I don't know
enjoyed
what
the
to
game
say.
as well.
You did good.
I enjoyed the game as well, but I think, I don't know, I guess maybe the look of it puts people off maybe a little bit too much.
It doesn't look like much, maybe. I like the mechanics. I would not have, unless it had been shown to us wherever that was, I would not have
It was
approached
a
it.
Dice Tower Con one year.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been like, oh, I want to sit down and play that. It's fantasy. I don't care.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would not have looked at it either, I think.
Yeah.
My turn. My number 8 is a game that I believe we all enjoy, and that's okay because
Not now.
it's
Not anymore.
Small World.
Okay.
Small World is a definite on the shell, definite generic fantasy. But once you crack that shell and you get some of those different things mixed into it, that's disgusting, man. What are you doing?
I don't know. You got this weird metaphor going on where you crack a shell and drink an egg or something. I don't know what's
No.
happening.
This is like a Shrek metaphor.
It's got
But
layers.
it kind of does. Once you peel back some of those layers, you begin to see that it does actually have a pretty eccentric fantasy, because you have a whole bunch of different powers that are mixing with a whole lot of different races, and it's just that mix comes up with a lot of really eclectic combinations. I mean, there are a lot of things that you would probably never thought of, and some of them make you chuckle, and some of them make you go, "Ooh, wow, that's really powerful. I'm going to use that again the next time I get the chance to." So, Small World is a really fun, very basic area control type of game where you're just trying to score the most points, and it's a lot of fun. It plays pretty quick, especially with people who are savvy on the rules, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy. I also like the fact that it comes with a number of different boards for all the different player levels. There's a different board for each player count, so I like that. I like the detail that went into that. So that's my number 8, Small World.
Yeah, this is one a good choice. It's not on my list, so it's not on
This was
all.
on my short list too. It would have been like 14 or something.
It was on your top 10 last time.
Okay. So it dropped a little bit.
But I like it too, and I like the fact that fantasy makes sense for this game. I can't think of, like, sci-fi doesn't feel like it would make sense as much.
Right.
Or the original theming, the Vinci, where it was just a civilization that had powers for whatever reason. And that felt too abstract. The fantasy made it easy.
Yeah.
Hey, this works, these guys do this. I like that.
Yeah, whenever you have a game that you're having a hard time making things make sense, fantasy, because it's anything.
Or just theme in general.
My number 8 is our first crossover.
Already?
And that's with Mr. Healy, because I probably won't cross over with Z much on this list. And it is Summoner Wars.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
I like Summoner Wars 2 for the same thing. I mean, it's a great game, amazing game. But taking the game out and just looking at the fantasy parts of it, I really enjoy that, because they did kind of generic fantasy, but they kind of try to stand things on their head a little bit.
Yeah.
Like they have the Deep Dwarves. Those dwarves are all about magic. That is not typical for dwarves. Are usually warriors and blah blah blah. And then they had the the ice orcs, which again it's kind of the trope, but they put something different on it.
into
And
it.
I like that. And then as they got more and more factions, then they start just making stuff up. Benders. I don't know what these guys are. The filth. It's like, well,
They're gross.
they're gross. Put them over here, you know. And I like that they added all this cool stuff. You know,
Gully dwarves are kind of filthy too. That's,
these are not quite the same as gully
I know
dwarves.
they're not the same as gully dwarves.
What is a
but
gully dwarf?
man,
A gully dwarf is like
geek card revoked.
a gully dwarf is like
Yeah.
a stupid dwarf. Think of
No, it's like a homeless dwarf. It lives in a ditch.
yeah. Well,
It's filthy.
they're pretty dumb in the books.
Yes,
As
they
a
are
goblin
dumb, too.
is to an orc, a gully dwarf is to a dwarf.
You just confused him even more.
I thought that made sense.
It does, actually.
Number 7.
Big Book of Madness is my number 7 from Yellow. It's a cooperative game in which, again, you are at a magic school, but you have you and the other group of students with you. You have opened some forbidden tome and unleashed some.
You're right. I just was thinking this was horror.
No, this is magic.
It's like toes that line a little.
like
I
they're
think
like
it
evil, like ooh, fantasy stuff. Though.
It's more mythological stuff.
No, because they're like genies and stuff.
Are they? I never even remember what they are. I just remember we did like
They're
these
like-
symbols that
That's
beat 'em.
mythology.
Genies?
Yes.
Nah, I don't know. Well, anyway, sorry.
Eastern-
Anyway,
I'm derailing you.
Big Book of
Absolutely.
Madness
Something I
has
never do. I
like
apologize.
evil.
I don't mean to derail you.
Has evil.
Well, I do.
It has
I'm
evil.
gonna derail it all the time.
It's kind of like evil.
Evil what? Say it!
It's sort of like evil.
Heelys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a co-op game. I enjoy it a lot. It's a deck building game actually as well. And it feels fantasy to me. When I play it, it feels like a fantasy game. It's unique because it does allow everybody to work together, and it's different enough from the usual sort of fantasy tropes that it feels fresh when I play it. I like the whole magic school thing.
This one
Even though
seems
I
like-
don't like Harry Potter's Like, I don't like that whole thing. Maybe because it's too.
It's almost hip. Harry Potter's almost like.
No, I don't care about that. I mean, but it's
Teeny
not.
bopper.
Yeah, it's too teeny bopper. Maybe it's not interesting because
That's what I meant.
hip is not teeny bopper.
Nope.
You're hip. You're not a teeny
Hip
bopper.
means
I'm
You
hip.
sounded like one just now. Teeny bopper. Was he going through puberty there for a second? Anyway, El Big Book
I put these
of
on to hide my
Madness.
tears.
That's my number 7. That took a long time.
Okay, my number 7 is my one Lord of the Rings entry. So I said there's one from
What's
each
that?
universe, and that's Battle of the Five Armies. Although there's a lot of great Lord of the Rings games, War of the Ring, but Battle of the Five Armies just lets me recreate my favorite battle, which even though I do love the Hobbit movies, they did not do a good job in portraying that as much as I'd like them to do.
what, the big battle at the end, you mean?
Yeah, it was cool, but
Definitely wasn't as good as the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
the big battle started off really neat,
Yeah.
and then they're like, I know there's this big battle going on, but let's go watch a couple people fight in the ice.
Yes.
And I was like, the big bear dude is supposed to come in. And he showed up for what, like
Although
2 seconds.
Although Keeley is the bomb, though.
Still, I was still annoyed.
He was the bomb.
Anyhow, but I love that battle. I've always thought that was the coolest battle, you know, where the good guys are not going to win, but eventually the Eagles show up, and then the bear dude shows up. And that's what happens in this game, is the bad guys are more powerful at the beginning, and they have to win as fast as they can, because if they don't, they can't.
If I've learned anything from the Hobbit series, it's that eagles will get you out of any predicament.
I agree. Also the ring.
So why don't they use
Jewelry
them
and eagles.
all the time? If I was Gandalf, I'd be like, no, you guys ain't flying away. You stay
he
right
tried.
here.
He tried to tell them when they were going through the mines of Moria. He said, "Fly, you fools."
Is that what that
He
meant?
laughed, but I've read whole treatises on the internet
That
where
is
they're
what that
saying
is.
that's what those people were saying. He was saying,
He told them,
"Go
"Fly."
fly."
He said, "Fly, you fools."
Let's
And people think run,
go
like fly, like run
fly a
away. He
kite.
meant fly. And they don't get it.
I don't.
That's the biggest tragedy of the
There's
whole
a
series.
whole book written about this.
There's definitely essays on it for sure.
That's right.
All right. Let's move on.
Is it my turn?
I think so.
All right, my number 7 is a 2-player card game that has a number of different ways that you can play it. You can play it 2 or 4 player. You can also play in a campaign version with its new Ruins of Thandar set, and this is Hero Realms. What? What did you think I was going to say?
Hero Realms.
Oh, okay, good.
I was lost, so I'm glad someone knew.
Really?
Well, I didn't know it was called Realms of Thandor.
Ruins of Thandor.
I was close.
Or Thandar, I can't remember. Anyway, Hero Realms is a derivative of Star Realms. It has character packs that are available that you have to purchase separately from the base game, which is kind of a crime, because what makes Hero Realms different from Star Realms, in the fact that each character comes with the ability of playing special kinds of cards that the other people don't have. They also have a different level of health that will make them either easier or harder to defeat, or whatever it might be. But this is a great 2-player card game, deck building, and attacking your opponent's cards, and that type of thing. It's a really fun game, really low level of entry as well. Hero Realms, my number 7.
Number 6.
All right, my number 6 is another newer game. Very similar to
Chess.
Warcraft, actually. And that is Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Oh, okay.
This one has 4 very generic races in the box to some degree. We got humans.
Goat herders.
No. A goat herder is what you do before the hero. You're called by you are a hero.
Oh, right. You used to be a goat herder.
Right.
Or like you used to shape mullets or something.
You're always living out in a village somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
It used to be like a
My
head.
goodness.
And then they're like, "You will be the one." And you're like, "Yes!" And you stab somebody with a pair of scissors and run off to the mountains.
And then they take you to jail.
He
Like, I'm
derails
sorry.
people all the time.
Anyway,
Choo-choo, baby, choo-choo. Go.
Oh.
so Heroes of Air,
Land, air,
Land, air,
and
and
Sea. Especially when you add the expansion with 4 other races. There's a lion race, a an undead race. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's cool. I didn't
yeah.
know that. Sounds better than what comes in the box.
Yeah, I like the 4 expansion races better, I think. But either way, and there's, I think, more coming along the way, probably for sure. But it does a really good job at build up your area, go fight other people, learn technologies, buy stuff, send units out that get killed, build them again, send them out again. Like a real-time strategy game.
Right.
And it does so in a pretty grandiose way, but not overstaying its welcome. I mean, it can take longer when you're first learning it, but after a while, 2-hour game, pretty standard. And I like that. It feels bigger than 2 hours, and it has a lot of great miniatures. Also, it's not tiny. It's just epic. You'd think they would put epic in the name.
I know, right? They do it for the tiny
Finally,
epic, but
you have an epic game.
they don't call it actual epic Heroes of Land, Air, and you know what I mean? Like,
No, we're not kidding. Really, it's an epic.
Actual epic Heroes of Land.
no, go for it, man.
Actually epic. There you go. That's what it's
All
called.
right, well, that's my number 6. Heroes of Land,
Heroes of Land,
and
Air,
Sea. All right, what's your number 6?
All right. My number 6 is a game that just got its 2nd edition printed, I believe, last year, and that is Kingsburg. Kingsburg is probably as generic fantasy as you can possibly get. And it's towing the line from having a theme that's not really connected that well to its mechanisms. But that's okay, because I enjoy it. I enjoy both aspects of it. I like the dice rolling. I like the worker placement that you use with those dice. I like the fact in the 2nd edition, the base game comes with all of the stuff that I liked from the expansion of the 1st edition. I like being able to make your village different than everybody else's, because you have, first of all, a greater number of rows in your village, and then you have cards or row cards that you can place on top of those rows to make your village different from everybody else's. I also like, which is kind of a takeaway from the 1st, I guess, because they have these tokens that did come in the expansion for the original that replace the King's Envoy support.
Yeah.
And I like that because each one that you don't use becomes points at the end of the game. So you can kind of hedge your bets, make sure you're getting a lot of military support during the seasons, and use all of your smaller level supports, and then get a big chunk of points at the end of the game. And so I like that extra level of thinking that goes into, or strategy that goes into the game. So I just like a lot of things about it. It's a great fantasy level family game. Kingsburg, 2nd edition, my number 6.
I like that it has those. I like that using those tokens gives you some hidden endgame scoring. Because in 1st edition Kingsburg, without using those, all the points are on the board. There is no hidden scoring. And sometimes it makes that last, half of a round really boring. It's like, well, I don't like that. I love some hidden scoring, some open scoring.
Case in point, beating those monsters in the winter is really hard when you forget to roll the King's support die.
Like for anyone?
Just saying.
Okay. All right, my number 6 is...
I forgot to do that last time I played it.
That's hilarious. Did everyone die? I mean,
No. We were actually all doing very good. It's just that we had very few points because we were pumping a lot of our effort into building up our support.
You just forgot that die was supposed to be rolled.
So you forgot it for everybody?
I forgot because the last time we played, it was at MeepleCon, and we played a 1st edition copy of the game that didn't have the expansion in it.
Oh, and I played with the tokens last time
we played with the tokens last time, so that rolling of the die wasn't fresh in my memory. So we forgot, and about halfway through the game, I was like, "Oh,
that's messed up. That's an arm throwing up the arms kind of."
No,
moment.
it is one of those moments. Yeah.
All right, so
I would never do that.
Yeah, you of course not.
My number 6 here is a game from the early '90s. It's a very popular game still. This is Magic: The Gathering, and Magic: The Gathering has fantasy. Has sort of an evolving theme. Each new set, they kind of go to a different plane, a different realm of existence, and they highlight whatever fantasy is from that world. Usually it's fantasy. Sometimes it has been sort of more technologically influenced things, like when they went to Mirrodin, it was, robots and stuff.
And they did horror, too.
And they've done some horror settings, with vampires and what have you, and you can find all those, certainly, but most of it is fantasy, very much rooted in fantasy, and they try to do things that are just slightly off center. You know, if they've got goblins, they tie those to whatever that world is. Maybe those goblins behave differently in whatever realm they're in. One set I really liked, I think they were the goblins. They had like this, they were called Kithkin, the Kithkins, and they had like a mind meld. So they worked as a unit, like they had sort of a hive mind. So that was cool. So Magic the Gathering, CCG, the most popular CCG for many, many years. And I enjoy it, casually, certainly, but it's a fun theme, and it utilizes it well. So that's my number 6.
I think they do a good job at this theme, bringing it into light, because people, you talk to Magic communities and everything, they know about the backstories. It's not just a game.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
They know about
there.
these planeswalkers. They know that, and people talk about the theming. And so I'm pretty impressed by that. They do a good job at bringing it out.
And there's enough there that some folks love that stuff, the story. And the cards do feed that story. And there's people who have no idea about that. The cards are just cool, and you just play with some named person. If you know who that is, then it adds to the theme of the game for you, but you don't need it.
Right.
You know, it's this concept of being a planeswalker going from world to world is like a cash printing machine, because they never run out of places to go. You know, and that's interesting. So that's my number 6.
Number 5.
All right, my number 5 is it's a pirate game, really. But I think pirates are fantasized heavily in the board game community. So I thought it was okay to go ahead and add it on there. Rum and Bones Second Tide.
Yeah, there's fantasy in that.
Definitely a lot of fantasy in there, but there's also a lot of mythology too. So this is one that kind of toes the line and that type of thing. Legend, maybe, I guess. Legend. I mean, sea monsters and all that kind of stuff. That's mythological.
Sure.
Because it's based in myth and that type of thing. But Rum and Bones Second Tide is a really fun game. And it's a game that can be played with multiple players. But I think, again, like a lot of these games that can be played with multiple players, I think it really sings best at just 2. And that's the way I enjoy playing it a lot. I like the fact that you have just a number of characters, core characters, heroes that you control. And those are the guys that you're really flying around the board, jumping around the board, swinging across to the other ship, that type of thing, and really exacting the most damage with them. But on top of that, you also have another level of programmed movement characters, which are the crew, that you can also use to your advantage. You can't make them do things, for example. They're all programmed, but you can use that program because you know exactly what they're going to do to your advantage.
If you think about it, it has to be like the worst pirate ship ever.
I know, right?
All your guys are like, oh. You're like, go over there. Whoa. That's what I'd say. Like, what is wrong with these guys? 'Cause they're like ants, and there's just like sugar all over the mast of the enemy ship. Like, rah.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
So it is, but it makes for a great game, and I really do enjoy it. It's a dice chucking adventure with a whole lot of theme just smothered in. So that's my number 5, Rum and Bones Second Tide.
That's on my short list. Okay, my number 5 is a game called Role Player, in which you are rolling up a character in a fantasy setting. You're not technically, it's like a metagame. You are supposed to be playing a fantasy game eventually, but that's not the game you're playing while you play this. And so it's very much a Euro game. You roll dice, you place them in the roles for like dexterity, strength, whatever the other fantasy things are. And you are...
Charisma, wisdom,
luck,
intelligence.
stuff like that. And then you are doing some card acquisition, buying up some cards, trying to hit specific goals. Again, it plays out very much like a Euro game. A pretty interesting, chunky one. There's quite a bit going on. But the setting is interesting. I put it on the list largely because I think what it does in a very clever way. It is a fantasy game-esque. It makes me think actually of the what's the one from Level 99 where you're supposed to be playing a CCG, like you are in a world. Millennium Blades, right? You are playing a CCG as your avatar in this game. What you are doing in that game is not playing a CCG.
I think the theme fits. I mean, it doesn't matter if who's playing who. This is a level removed. You're still doing fantasy.
Yeah, it's metagame. It's metagame.
Do you like this better than Sagrada?
Oh, miles better.
Really?
Yeah.
Miles better.
But this is Fantasy World,
just-
so it's more like kilometers or clicks.
Kilometers are not a fantastical
Leagues.
measure. Sure.
Leagues, yes.
I like it way better. Yeah.
Really? I don't. That's weird.
That is weird.
That is weird. I mean, I do like the game, but I like Sagrada better. I don't know why. Because they're both played in very strikingly similar.
I mean, at a very high level, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But Sagrada has very little going on.
True.
I thought it was very simplistic.
No, it is.
All right.
So anyway, that's my number 5 role player.
My number 5 is the most generic fantasy on my list.
Okay.
Generic. And that is Defenders of the Realm.
Yeah.
It's super generic to the point where I think the people are called like Barbarian. But I don't think they even have
They don't have names?
I don't remember them having names. Anyway, but I like this game. Yes, it's a fantasy version of Pandemic with a lot of extras thrown in. And I like Defenders of the Last Stand better, but this one just feels like your heroes going around and doing things. I feel very heroic going around killing piles of orcs and undead and all that jazz. I like when the dragons are in there too, when you play with the expansion with 4 dragons. So it's a lot of fun for me. The little miniatures don't hurt the whole thing. The old Larry Elmore artwork, which is kind of dated, but still gives you that fantasy feel.
Yeah, it's like a very quaint kind of like. I find it kind of charming, that artwork.
Yes. I still think
Maybe because I don't care for fantasy
I still think we're
that
using
much.
charming a lot of times as a substitute for bad.
No. I don't think it's a bad artwork. I think it's technically, from a technical point of view, it's very good artwork. But you look at it and you go, oh, old 80s fantasy.
Right.
I like that look. I find it
I know this because I
quaint.
just showed him some stuff before we did this video that's just hideous, and he was like, "Oh, charming."
Yeah, I like that look. Because and then like the flip side of that is like Fantasy Flight artwork, where it's like so pristine and shiny, and it's like, whoa, it's like it's been glossed to a high, it's like shine to a high mirror finish,
Yeah.
I like both of those.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So anyway, my number 5, Defenders of the Realm.
cool.
Number 4.
All right, my number 4 is probably going to step on those mythological, legendary toes a lot.
Said the Minotaur.
Arthurian legend is one of my weak spots as far as themes are concerned, and Shadows over Camelot, I believe, falls into that category, but I also think it falls into a fantasy category as well.
Okay.
So that
Well, it's not historical, that's for sure. So
well, it's based on history, apparently.
yeah, ish.
Exactly.
Very ish.
Yeah.
The Holy Grail.
There's a lot of embellishment going on there, yes, but it is based upon some facet of history, or rather many facets of history that are just kind of thrown together. But Shadows of Camelot is one of those games that has mechanisms that aren't really married that well to the theme. I mean, you're playing poker. Basically, you're trying to get 3 of a kind and 2 of a kind over here. You're trying to get this over here, and you're trying to get rid of cards in the quest for the Holy Grail. And by the way, you're also throwing cards into the lake looking for the Excalibur. Yeah, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Oh, and by the way, if you get a straight, you can go beat the Picts or the Saxons, depending on where you are.
Those guys are really bad poker players.
Yes, they are. I mean, and they're horrible at gambling as well. So.
That's the theming.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
kind of is.
The theme does not really match the mechanisms, but it does help bring those mechanisms out of the dark, I guess you could say, or rather push them into the dark, because you don't feel like you're playing poker. You feel, well, I mean, you kind of are.
I feel like I'm trying to figure out, is Z the traitor again?
Yes.
That's what the
That
game
is
should
true.
I
be
usually
called for
feel
me.
like I'm trying to figure out if you're holding a 2 or a 1.
Is Z the traitor?
And if you're like, I can help a
again.
little bit, then it's a 1.
Yes, that's
I think
true.
we have that terminology figured out.
We have it nailed down. Yeah.
I would rather just be like, I'm holding a 3 and a 5. Yeah.
I need just a little
Theme hater.
just a little middling of help. I need a lot of help. Yes, that type of stuff. Anyway, Shadows over Camelot has always been one of my favorite games to play. I really enjoy it. I love the co-op nature of it. I love the fact that there could be a traitor in there. So much.
Always a traitor in my
I
games.
always put a traitor in as well.
force it?
Yeah, I think that's where the game really sings. I don't like forced I don't like forced.
Cooperation.
No, forced, the opposite of that. Forced anxiety, I guess you could say, where there might be a traitor or there might not.
Oh,
You
I
just
like
feel like
that.
an idiot at the end of the game because there wasn't a traitor. So all
I feel like an idiot
all
because I
that
believe
anxiety.
Z again.
I like this tension of there might be one, and so everything looks suspicious.
Yeah,
Feels like a
that's-
good movie where you
that's-
don't know who you can trust.
I guess so.
And it was the butcher's
I don't
wife
know.
all
It's just
along.
in a movie, I guess I'm okay with that. In a board game, I'd rather have real tension. I know that one of the people sitting at the table is not going to help us. Is in the end is not going to be helping
Okay.
us. It's just different strokes, different folks.
yeah,
but
that sounds-
I really
both
enjoy
wrong.
it. Shadows over Camelot, my number 4.
I like knowing who the traitor is, period.
And if Z's
Deal
playing,
have the cards face up. That's the one way to do it. Yeah.
No, I'll do them face down. I'm just going to look at them before I give the
Yeah, see.
That way I know.
Nobody else knows. Got it.
All right, well, Z was just talking about the Fantasy Flight artwork, so my number 4 is from the Terranoth universe, which honestly we make fun of a lot for good reason. It's really kind of a ripoff of Dungeons and Dragons.
Is Runebound one?
No,
Descent.
it's Descent. I mean, Battlelore probably would have made my top 10. I just put 1. They did a good job with Descent. What I really like with Descent is they made Descent and had all these very generic things. Ogre and Troll and
Right.
all these things.
Right.
And then they made Descent 2, which they wanted to make compatible. They wanted an upgrade pack to use all that stuff.
Right.
But they couldn't use any of those monsters again.
Sure.
So they made all these really weird monsters, which makes the game better. To have this
Right.
weird stuff in there. And I like that. And I mean, they're not completely generic. It's probably closer to Magic
Grilled
the
cheese
Gathering.
demon.
Grilled cheese demon. Where'd that come from? Are you hungry?
Maybe.
We should grilled cheese sandwiches. Here's some. Hey, we're getting off topic.
he's hungry too.
He's a grilled cheese.
I really am
demon.
hungry. Grilled cheese. Okay. Tomato soup. Anyhow, that's the imp. Anyway.
Oh, that's nasty.
I love it. Halloween meal. Grilled
There's a
cheese
lot of
demon
dungeon
and then
crawlers out
melted in.
nowadays, and all of them are competing to be better than Descent. Really.
You don't think we're
Descent-
past that by now?
I still think Descent's kind of the
It's like the big one.
one that people measure it by.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it has
it's-
a scope that few other games can touch, really.
Yeah,
And
and-
plus, it has the years behind it of content release.
10 years now.
Right.
That's
Right,
crazy.
right, right.
So anyway, Descent, and I like second edition the best, I think. But it's just fun. It's kind of like a dungeon crawl brought to life. Yeah, it's mostly kick the doors down and kill everyone inside, ish. But there's not a lot of role play. But sometimes I'm happy with that.
Right. Okay. Well, my number 4 is a game that I suspect will shortly show up on Tom's list. And this is a game called Near and Far. Near and Far is the follow-up to Above and Below, which was also a fantasy game, but the fantasy simply wasn't that strong. And in this one, you are questing, it's sort of an action selection kind of worker placement game, but a large part of it is going out there and exploring and reading passages and having encounters with fantastical creatures. And it is a game that manages to both be rich and full of story. It doesn't avoid generic fantasy by giving you a picture that doesn't look anything like an ogre or an elf or whatever, but it actually tells you a story using these creatures. It embraces not being generic in a very interesting way. And yeah, I mean, you can find parallels to what we call generic fantasy, but overall it definitely feels like its own world. And it's one that I'm happy to have an adventure in. It's a very well-made game. Definitely better, in my opinion, than Above and Below, which again was sort of an ill marriage between this worker placement and some storytelling. So Near and Far, my number 4, a game that I've actually not delved into as much as I would like to. This is one I want
I don't
to.
think you even own it, do you?
I do not.
I have to get this one. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was on my short list. I do like the fantasy world a lot.
It's not on your list, really. Interesting.
I know something that is going to be on his list.
Number 3.
All right, now it's time for my generic Dungeons and Dragons entry. But Dungeons and Dragons
done that
isn't really
already?
that
No.
generic. No, I haven't done it. Well, I mean, Defenders of the Realm is kind of like Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great Dungeons and Dragons games, the Lords of Waterdeep, but I'm picking the adventure games, whatever one you want.
Oh.
Castle Ravenloft. I like these games a lot because they take Dungeons and Dragons and they distill it down to a really simple game.
Right.
It's not that complex, but it's just fun to see all the different monsters. And nowadays they've done a good job at having a good story. Castle Ravenloft had a story, but the newer stories are better. Like the latest one, we were in a jungle and trying to figure out, plants were attacking us. I don't know. I enjoyed how that worked out. Still, once I'm done, they get into this multi-generational weird, everything mixed into
combine them, you
one
mean?
giant thing.
Yeah.
I'm in the castle and a vine snake attacked me in this room along with a desert mummy.
Right.
How'd that happen? Vassal mixed the decks.
Magic. Yeah, that's how that happened. Magic.
But I don't look at it as a dungeon crawl at all. I think if you do so, you'll be disappointed. I look at it as a cooperative game. We have to finish a mission here together.
Okay.
So, also,
haven't played any of
they
the
are now
recent ones,
painting
but-
all the miniatures.
Really? They
Yeah,
just
Whiz
come
Kids.
like that?
No, you can buy one of two sets. Remember, the
Okay,
painted or
okay,
the non-painted.
I haven't played any of the WizKids ones. I played them before they took them over.
I don't think you would find the differences to be that staggering.
Okay, then I don't like these. Because the original ones I played... The original ones were just... I hated the lack of precision you had with the monster movement was my main concern. It really bothered me. Maybe that's not a problem anymore. But they
Yeah,
would be like, the monster spawns in this room. Where in the room? In there, like close to you. It was like they had like this sort of lack of,
No, they have exact things now. There's spots on the tiles where the monster shows up. Monsters move. They
and
move
they like
closer
moved
to you.
kind of like towards you. I don't like that kind of stuff. I want it to be precise. Tell me what happens. I don't want to.
You have a very similar argument with Black Plague.
Black Plague. Yeah. I don't like that lack of precision.
Yeah.
Which is why I love the way they handle that sort of movement in the others. Because they're the spaces.
Is this your transition?
No. That's horror. I would have put it on the
Black
list.
Plague, you're number 3.
No.
I brought it.
It's over to you, number 3.
Yeah, I know, but I was making a point. But I'll shut up now and talk about my number 3 instead, which is Abyss. Abyss has again a very unique world. That's why it's this high on my list. I also like the game a lot. But I put it at this spot because the fantasy in it is very different from everything else on this list. It's an underwater world with this caste system and all these farmers and politicians and warring groups, and it's a weird, bizarre, gorgeously illustrated world.
Kind of like Finding Nemo with an edge.
Yeah, kind of like Finding Nemo all grown up. Sure.
Nemo gets to this world. He doesn't get out.
He doesn't. No. You don't
He's
get
now
away
a servant
from this.
for one of these lords.
So I like that look a lot. I think it's an interesting game. It's a very, it's just a card game, really. It's got a board that's almost superfluous, but it's a very evocative world.
Yeah, I love that world. That's cool.
And I love playing in it. It's just, I don't know, it's cool. So that's my number 3, Abyss.
My number 3 is probably about as generic as fantasy. This is the most generic fantasy game on my list, I think.
Fantasy war fight battle.
No, it's
Sword and Sorcery.
called Sword and Sorcery. That is correct.
But
Yeah.
thinking about it, even the name is super
Yeah,
generic.
it really is.
When I first heard Sword and Sorcery, I was like, is that one of the competitors that came out after Dungeons and Dragons? And they're like, oh, we also have an RPG called Sword and Sorcery.
Yeah, I actually
no.
thought it was, when I first heard of the game, my first thought was they made a board game about that old movie called Swords and Sorcery way back when, and I was like, wow. I can't
Well, the cover
remember
doesn't
name.
change that.
I can't even remember the name of it, but the dude had like a sword that had 3 things, and you could push a button, and the sword would shoot out pneumatically and like chop people's heads
I
off.
don't remember that at all.
And
I
then he
don't
could
think
go
I've ever
and-
seen that
he
movie.
could
wanna
go and
watch
pick it up
this
and
movie.
reload it.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to watch this. Sounds awesome.
And for
Like,
some reason,
I want a string on it. I don't want to have to go pick it
Cromwell,
up.
Oliver Cromwell was in this movie. I was like,
For Cromwell?
no, well, his name was Cromwell. I just put Oliver on there because I always think of Oliver Cromwell whenever I
right.
watch.
I'm assuming with a name like Cromwell, he was a bad guy.
But
Was it Cromwell the bad guy?
oh yeah, he was definitely the
That
bad guy.
doesn't sound like a good guy name.
Oh,
But anyway, Sword and Sorcery, the board game from Ares Games, is a dungeon crawl that really feels like a board game version of an RPG. And that's what I like a lot about it, because it differentiates itself a little bit from the pack of, say, Massive Darkness and Zombicide Black Plague and all of those other kind of generic-ish, and even Descent a little bit as well. Not that I'm saying that it's better than Descent, but it
Feel like you are.
differentiates itself a little bit from that because it has the storyline. It has the storyline. It has the overarching campaign feel, and I know Descent does that, but a lot of those other dungeon crawlers just don't have that overarching story that's there, and I like that about the game, and I do like how they kind of make it a mystery on what, you know, that there's some bad dudes that are down the hall right there, but you don't know exactly what they are yet until that token flips over.
Okay.
And so I like that kind of stuff. So Sword and Sorcery, my number 3.
Number 2.
all right. I am curious what your numbers 2 and 1 here are going to be. I guess I've said
I
a
know
lot of
what
this
1
stuff.
is.
Let's go.
No,
Start.
I know me too, but I'd know for him, but I don't know what 2 is going to be, and you have no idea. Anyway,
Because I'm elusive, baby.
you're a loose cannon, yes.
I know,
My
I'm
number 2
elusive.
is Legends of Andor. This is probably the most traditional,
Oh, yeah, I should have known this would be on your list. You love
big
this game.
fantasy, ride around on horses and fight bad ogre-looking things.
That's the terminology in the game,
That is
too.
his definition.
We're riding on a horsey. Big bad ogre-looking thing.
Kill it.
Kill it with your sharp thing.
You know, like of all these games, this is the one that when you think
Kill it with your pointy
fantasy
stick.
game, this is the most traditional of these. That's what I mean. But it's a good one, and it's a co-op game, which for me kind of makes it better. I don't normally like fantasy, but if it's a co-op game, then I kind of get into it a little bit more. And while most of the characters certainly are fairly generic, you got like the ranger and the dwarf and that sort of thing, the baddies are a little bit outside of that. They took a little bit of, they took a bit of a leap to make them not just ogre and whatever. There's some one specific enemy one specific enemy is these like dog-looking things called Wardrax or something, and they look like a big black wolf thing with spikes, and they are very fast on the board, so they'll activate very quickly and run up to the castle or wherever they're going and attack. And it's a game that the thing that keeps it on the list for me is the fact that it feels largely like a puzzle.
It does, and that's why it's not so high on my list. Because when you're sitting there going, we shouldn't kill that enemy.
Correct.
I'm like, well,
But I want to.
why?
Why not?
Right.
I want to murderize him.
Yeah. And I like that. I like that it is not just. I got other games for that, like, hey, baddie, roll dice, kill it. No, kill it.
Really?
Kill
Which
it.
game on your list met that
Not
requirement?
this list,
Yeah,
because I
that's
don't
what
like
thought.
fantasy.
I hate your likes.
Anyway, my number 2, Legends of Andor. Good game, very fun. Lots of support out there from the company. They have a lot of expansions and stuff. So yeah, it's a good one. Check it out. It's my number 2.
What are you doing?
Waiting on you.
It's a drum roll. Number 2.
My number 2 is a game
What is
that we just played a new standalone expansion for live a few days ago, and it is Zombicide Black Plague. Zombicide Black Plague. Green Horde is a standalone expansion for Zombicide Black Plague.
No, just it feels like a month ago. I guess you're right. It was like a week ago.
It was just before we went to
you're
Gimli.
right.
It was a long week.
Yes, that is very true. But Zombicide Black Plague is actually, in my opinion, the best version of Zombicide that's out there. And I know there's a lot of people that disagree with me because there's so much for normal Zombicide that's out there. So they would have probably a hard time thinking that Black Plague is better. But I think it fixes some of the problems that Zombicide had. And true, you could take those fixes and just apply apply them to Zombicide. But I really like the fantastical setting of Zombicide.
Yes, this is the time where the fantasy works better, I think.
Yeah, I do too. I really do think so. I like it better in a fantastical setting than the modern or futuristic post-apocalyptic setting that Zombicide is. So I like the game a lot. It is one of those games where it's bad dude, let's go kill it.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's like, whoa, really big bad dude. We can't kill it yet. We have to look for the weapons to kill it before we can actually try that. But so I just really enjoy this game a lot. It sings on a lot of different levels to me, and that's number 2, Zombicide.
Cool.
Black Plague.
That one I didn't put on the list. I like the game quite a bit, but I don't know. It felt more like horror to me, I guess. I went for more.
You know what?
I would agree with you with Zombicide, but because it's medieval, it's fantastical.
You know what? I agree. I don't feel the horror when I play Zombicide Black Plague. It feels like that's what the zombies are, like the weirdest creature. In modern setting, horror. In fantasy setting, just another creature you kill. I mean, like skeletons, for example. Like you fight skeletons all the time.
The necromancer is bringing them to life and that type of stuff.
You're right.
That is weird, though, right? Like skeletons in a fantasy setting, you're like, a couple skeletons, we got to deal with them. If a skeleton walked in the room right now, I'd be through this TV and the wall. Actually, I'd probably go through that open door.
That's probably it. I'll go through you.
Be like a cutout of Tom right here.
Actually, there'd be bloody, like, oh, apparently you can't do that.
That doesn't work. All right.
All right, I like unique fantasy worlds, and Ryan Lockett does a great one. My number 2 is Near and Far.
What a dork. I knew it was on his list.
Yeah.
I didn't say it wasn't.
Yes, you
I
did.
said it made my short list, and then it made it onto the list.
Oh, he did. Technically not lie to me.
And then you said it didn't make your list, and I was like,
He definitely misled.
which is not, no, I misled.
Oh, he made a face only. He didn't
So
say
he was-
something.
he was-
I'm learning from you.
This cat
He was still deceptive.
just pulled a
without
usual
lying.
suspects move on me, man.
Anyhow,
Kaiser Sose. That's who you are right now.
but I do really like, I like this universe. Apparently all those games are in the same universe. And like I really like the theming of the one that we almost never played with the giant golems that you gotta go kill.
The ancient world.
Ancient World. I like that a lot. But the Near and Far is really cool, especially because the story like keeps interweaving. You learn more about these characters and that stupid thing you released and swore fealty to.
That's right, baby.
The Red King or whatever.
Always
Pledge my
Swearing
allegiance to
fealty
the
to stuff.
dark side.
He didn't even hesitate. He's like,
I was like,
"Do
I'm
it."
doing it. Sounds like the more interesting of the options.
But it's also a really solid game too. But I just like the backstory, and I'm really pumped that there's more coming. And what's really neat about this game is you can also go through and play with your own character having a backstory, which is really just really fun.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Near and Far, my number 2.
He likes to play a lot of these fantasy games by himself.
Not his number 1, certainly.
Oh, probably not. No.
I'm leaving.
And finally, number 1.
All right, let's see how well these dice
Pretty
work.
sure he did.
All right, here we go. These are probably bouncy, huh?
We'll find out.
You got a 3.
I did. Oh, 1.
Yeah, but it's red.
Yeah!
Now Sam
5.
changed mine to a 2
That's right.
You
and
doesn't-
rolled a 5.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just provide further
Can you
differentiation.
imagine playing the game Strike with these?
I actually played that at MeepleCon.
I know, you liked it, you said.
I did. I enjoyed it.
Dice and
Imagine
a ball.
Oh, that would be horrible.
A bigger bowl and playing with those, that'd be pretty funny. That might actually make the game good. Anyway, what's the order?
Wow.
I'm with him.
Wow. The order shall be
Really?
go this away.
Starting with me.
So you're last.
You're last.
I
You
am.
like putting yourself in that position of like glory. Okay.
I get the last word.
All right.
All right,
that
I'm trying to
works.
think what Z's is. Give me a clue.
It's
See, I would have
been-
guessed Legends of Andor, but you already said that for your
I
number
did
2.
for number 2, yes.
And you're
yes,
not doing
yes,
horror,
yes,
so all that Cthulhu
And he
nonsense
said,
is out.
and he said the others isn't on there because he
No,
thinks
no,
that's
that kind of,
horror.
it's horror. It's
No,
not
it's
on
definitely
here.
a horror game anyway.
Yeah.
And even like Zombicide, Black
all right,
Plague,
what kind of realm are we in? Oh, I guess it's
fantasy
Fantasy
realm.
realm.
Oh, Fantasy Realms.
Fantasy Realms was on my short list. It's not it, but that was on my short list. It's good.
There's like zero theme in that game. Though.
Yeah. It's a game that's already been mentioned.
Well, not on my list. Can't be.
He
Has to
said-
be Kingsburg.
Rum and Bones Second
Not a
Tide.
fantasy game.
Rum and Bones Second Tide, he said, was on his short list.
It's not on my list. That's not it. I'll give you another clue.
Summoner Wars, is that high?
I'll give you another clue.
I guess not. Shadows over Camelot.
It's on both your lists.
Oh. I already know what your number one is.
It is.
Battle
Summoner
War?
Wars.
Summoner Wars. Okay.
Now we're all trolling each other?
It is Summoner Wars. Yeah, it's that high. It is that fun of a theme. Again, I like it because it is not. It's a fighting game in a fantasy setting, but I like these characters. It's
Yeah.
not just more stupid like elves, that I don't care about, and they all like I've seen them in 52.
Well, there are
other
elves in
generic-
it. They're just jungle elves, baby.
Yeah, and they're different a little bit, right? And you said like, oh, they got into weird stuff like the Benders. I love that stuff.
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
got like the
One of
Filth.
my favorite factions.
Filth is
actually.
one of my favorite factions. The Benders too. The
The cloaks.
Cloaks, yeah.
Then there's the
Oh, they got so many. yeah.
angels. There's the rams, who are like you hardly ever see like
Vanguard.
the Vanguard. Yeah, that's a really cool
yeah.
faction.
So I like it a lot. I
There's
think it's
also
a
the
fun.
Brewers and the Cubs.
Oh my goodness! Well,
Because
if
I
there
mean,
was Cubs, it would be the suckiest faction there.
Really?
You brought it.
Really?
You brought it in, dude.
Really?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't go.
Yeah.
Don't you run away.
When did the
Yeah. That's right.
case I need it.
Now what's what?
what did the Blue Jays do?
They fly.
Yeah.
Away
Yeah, exactly.
in fear.
Yes, they do.
I finished about 30 seconds ago.
Oh, it's my turn. All right, shockingly, my number one is Gloomhaven. There wasn't even any build up there because
Shocking.
We know.
Again, I like the Gloomhaven unique.
I think the whole reason we're
World.
doing this list is because he just
he can
wanted
talk
to
about Gloomhaven again.
I don't shoehorn Gloomhaven into other lists.
That's why you picked
That's
top
why
10
you picked
fantasy.
this one.
I picked it because it was the next one in our queue.
Oh.
Fantasy sucks. top 10 sci-fi is next, right?
Almost sounded auto-tuned.
Well, ish. We're gonna be breaking up sci-fi.
Would Gloomhaven count as sci-fi?
No.
Why?
We don't talk about this right now. Tell us about Gloomhaven and why it's your number one.
Gloomhaven is a really fun dungeon crawl. It's
Do you like playing with other humans?
No, he does not. Not this particular game,
Do you like putting stickers on things?
I do.
apparently. Yes.
Do you like playing a fighting game in which you're actually just sort of solving puzzles?
Yes.
Then don't give me garbage about no Legends of Andor. Oh. Blam, son! You've been Gloomhavered.
Gloomhaven, baby. That's
All
a
right.
thing.
Anyway, it's a good choice. I would like to play it.
You're
I would
right,
too.
though.
I would like to play it as well.
I've been Gloomhavered.
I would like to play more than once, yeah. No.
All right, my number one is a game that just came out last year. I was first introduced to it in the UKGE.
Oh, what is this?
During our trip to the UKGE and my solo trip to Warhammer World in
Oh, it's
Nottingham.
one he's been playing all over the place these days.
Warhammer Underworld
Oh,
Shadespire.
okay, yeah, makes sense.
You played it like twice on the trip at least, I think.
Yeah, I think I did.
Played it with me live not too long ago.
Yes. So I've
Did
been,
you like it?
been playing this a lot lately.
I'll ask you later.
And
I like
wow, he doesn't like it as much.
You don't like it?
But
No, it's like a 7.
That's kind of what I said, actually.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's almost a 10 for him now.
Right. No, I liked it. I mean, I'm not like, oh wow, it's perfect. I love it. But it was streamlined and fun. Yeah.
And the reason that it's on this list is because it is part of Warhammer's Age of Sigmar universe, which is their fantasy realm of their Warhammer franchise. 40K is their science fiction side of it, and Age of Sigmar now is fantasy. It used to just be called Warhammer Fantasy, but
Right,
Age
right.
of Sigmar is their new one. And this one is a game where it's just a 2-player. It can be played as 3 or 4 players, but it just
You're a sucker if you do.
it's excruciatingly long at 3 and 4 players. So it's just a great card-driven 2-player back and forth. I activate Then we have a power step. We can play cards to try to prepare for the next activation. The next person activates, and there's only 3 rounds. During tournament level, you're actually going to be playing 3 games successfully. The person will possibly 3 games. The person,
Successively, you mean, I think.
successively. That's
You said successfully, but
which
I guess you would
You could do
that
both,
too.
right? Yeah, that makes sense.
If you successfully play 2 games,
Same thing.
then you don't have to play the 3rd. There you go. So that's my number 1. It's really I really enjoy this game a lot. Each of the different factions, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 factions that are available right now, and they all play differently. And I
Skavens,
really
baby.
enjoy that. Yes, Skaven are monsters.
I just realized that if we ever if someone in another country is using our videos to learn English, we're really doing them a disservice.
What do you mean? We just threw out some words.
Well, first of
were
all,
decent
you
words,
should not be
man.
watching our videos to learn English. I apologize.
Why not? I think we in the Sam and I sense, use words correctly for the most part, largely correctly,
We try.
and we try to mix up our vocabulary usage. You
Usage of
teach
vocabulary.
that what we call cray-cray English. Which is largely made up words, and
Go look
as
that
in
up.
made up in the last 12 hours.
All right, those are our famous.
Wow, he's
Those are our
speechless.
famous
He's
picks,
speechless.
baby.
My 11 through 15 were 11, Massive
What?
Darkness, 12, Battle of 5 Armies, 13, Guards of Atlantis, 14, Thunder and Lightning, which is kind of mythological, it really is.
Yeah.
But and then my 15, my Dungeons and Dragons one was Tyrants of the Underdark.
Yeah, I know you like that one. All right. So, tell us what your favorite fantasy games are in the description. Tell us why ours are wrong. I don't know why I have to
Tell
tell
me
people
what I'm
that.
missing.
They're gonna do that.
What am
anyway.
I missing from fantasy?
What else should we
games?
say to other people say? Like, subscribe, share.
Yeah, that covers it.
Is that what people say? I don't know.
Oh, you click that now that you click a little bell and it informs you when new videos show up? I
really?
would say don't do that because you're going to be like,
Ding, 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 ding.
Hey, we appreciate you watching a lot. We'll see you next time. Until then, I'm Tom Bassel.
I'm Z Garcia. Thanks, everybody.
Sam Healy. See you on the flip side, folks.
Woohoo!